Hello and welcome to episode 509 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. Join me as always is the glorious LeagueFreak. You can also find me on Twitter at LeagueFreak. How you going there, mate?
Going very well, Andrew. How are you?
I'm good, man. I did that one smooth and consistent like we had done for nearly half of the last episodes that we've done.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. This is a special episode because it is the 2024 NRL Season Preview, and everyone loves our preview episodes.
Well, I mean, they are 100% accurate every time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, except for the bits that are inaccurate. But if you disregard those, perfect.
60% of the time, we are accurate 100% of the time.
It's close to that, yes.
Yeah.
So, we're going to go through every team and have a bit of a yak about them and how we think they'll go. And we'll also, we'll also put in what we think their ladder position will be at the end of the year.
Yeah. So how will we start this? Will we go by, we always do this every year, alphabetical order, reverse alphabetical order, what they finished last year? What will we do?
I'm happy to go alphabetical order.
Okay.
Because I've written some points down. I went in alphabetical order, so I'm just going to go with that.
Okay, let's do it that way.
Notice how I haven't asked what order you put stuff in. I've pretty much just gone, to hell with what you want to do.
Oh, shit.
So there might be a pause every time after I start talking because Freaky's got to scroll through whatever he's got to try and find what he's up to because I'm being an asshole.
Finally, you're doing it for a change.
Hey, new year, new me.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll start with the Broncos. I was going to ask you, we'll do this thing for all of them, what we think their strength and their weakness might be.
Mm-hmm.
We won't go too in depth, but that's kind of what we'll look at. It could be anything, but I'll go with their strength being their attack. They actually are able to score points pretty much from anywhere on the field.
Yeah.
And from nowhere.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. So if I've got a stat here. In 10 of their 27 games last year, they scored 30 or more points. And they were kept to less than 20 points on just 7 occasions and only once in the last 15 games of the year. So they got that attack absolutely humming for the back end of the season. If they keep that going again, they are going to be hard for any defensive side to keep quiet.
Yeah.
And for the weakness, I've got in there lapses.
Yeah.
They will just zone out for some reason, whatever, who knows. It could be a momentum change or a decision goes against them. I'm talking just within a game. They usually come back, but they'll have these moments where they'll just lapse and just zone out for a little bit. And that's the opportunity that other teams need to get back in the game. But you can't be patient and wait for it. It may not come.
Mm-hmm.
But if it does, you've got to be making sure you're pouncing on it because you're not going to get too many of them. And you need to put on a few points a few tries in a row if you can to try and claw back in the gap or try and get out ahead and try and create a bit of a buffer there if you can. Which is what Penrith did in the grand final. They just waited and waited and waited. Probably a bit too long, but they stayed there. They were patient until they got the job done. Yeah. That's what I've got for their strength and weaknesses. How about yourself?
I think this year for the Broncos, their strength is going to be just the natural progression of the young players in their team. We talked a little bit last year about how at one point a few years ago we were lining up the Panthers and the Broncos as the two young teams to look out for. The Panthers, we've seen what they've gone on and done, but unfortunately the Broncos, they had Anthony Seibold as their coach and they had to go through a rebuild because of him and how bad he was. And this is almost like a take two for the side. And I think that's why they've come on so strong because they've always had that talent there. It was just a case of getting a lot of other things right before that talent could really show what it was able to do. And I think that going to the grand final last year and losing the grand final, I don't think it'll affect them as much as it maybe would a side that was a little bit older than them and maybe felt like they'd missed their chance. And I think somebody like, say, the Parramatta Eels, I think that was maybe a feeling they had that hurt them last year. this Broncos team can be a contender for a number of years. But there's also a bunch of younger players in their side who just, they're getting more experience all the time in the NRL. They've now got finals experience, grand final experience. And for me, the strength is going to be the way that they naturally just become better players because of that experience. In terms of like a weakness for them, I don't know. I mean, I always worry about because there's still players in this side that did hit that rock bottom when the Broncos were at their worst just a few years ago. It's weird. It wasn't that long ago.
No.
You got to wonder it's hard to get rid of that completely out of a side. And Kevin Walters has done a fantastic job to do that. But you got to worry if it's going to rear its ugly head again. That's the only thing that really worries me about them. That, and you've always got to worry about Adam Reynolds' health because he is, an older player, and he's, we've talked about how he normally gets injured around finals time, unfortunately. And, he didn't get injured last year, and you can see how well he played through the finals. You just hope that he doesn't get injured going into the finals again, because they'd be hard pressed to overcome losing their halfback at that point of the season, like anyone would.
Yeah. They've had a few losses to their forward pack in the offseason. So they've lost Kurt Capewell, who's gone to the Warriors. Thomas Flegler's gone to the Dolphins, and Keenan Palacio has gone to the Titans. Well, they've lost in the backs. Herbie Farnworth has also gone to the Dolphins.
Yeah, I think Farnworth will be the one that really hurts them there, because he's a fantastic player. He's such a good player. He's a really good strike player, and he gave them strike on both sides of the field. So I think they're really going to miss him.
Best English centre since who? Put you on the spot.
The best English centre since, what was that? The red-headed dude that used to play for the Broncos.
Jack Reed?
Jack Reed, yeah. The best English centre since him.
There you go. The loss of Farnworth will be compounded by the fact they don't have hugely great depth in the back line either.
Yeah. I guess the thing that they've got, the Broncos have had this weird thing where they've got all of these young, talented backs, and like super, super talented backs, and so many of them don't translate to first grade for some reason, and they need to work that out.
Yeah. So they might struggle a little bit with depth as the season goes on, but still on a bloody top side on the field there. There's no doubt about it. Where do you have them coming on the ladder?
I have them winning the minor premiership.
I've got them second.
Okay.
All right. Next, we'll go to Canberra. I've got their strength being their pack. Basically, especially, I'm going to have to use the zoning thing that we don't like. They're forwards in the middle of the park, so they're your props and your lock.
Yeah.
Those positions, especially not just on the field, but also on the bench rotation, there's very little drop-off in quality and intensity from what starts the game and who's coming off the bench. And that's a really impressive thing that they've got going for them. It is largely in the middle that they've got that powerful section, though. On the edges, it's still not too bad. But yeah, they are going to be a team that's going to play a lot off their forwards and what they do. For weakness, though, I've got consistency, I think, is going to start being a much bigger issue. And I wouldn't be surprised if, as the season wears on, a little bit more pressure starts coming on Ricky Stewart, and that could see him get a little bit more crankier and lose a bit more control over what's going on around him.
Is that even possible?
Sorry?
Is that even possible?
Oh, look, it's a prediction. It's a prediction. But I think the Raiders have been coasting too long. The loss of Jack Whiten should see them change the way they play the game, because they're going to have genuine halves. They're not going to have like a makeshift half in there, but it's also going to be they're going to be very light on when it comes to half depth. So they're going to have to change the way they play the game a fair bit, which is why I think they're probably going to focus more on playing in that middle section of the field and go off the back of the four. It's kind of like when Hasler was coaching the Bulldogs when they were making the finals. It's going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if they have that more of a dynamic about the way they play the game.
I personally, I've watched a lot of the talk that's been coming out of Canberra over the off season, and it's really jumped out at me because of how optimistic they are. I think this is going to be a really rough season for them. I agree with you that their forward pack is their strength, but I don't know that it's not the sort of forward pack that I know I would worry too much about. And they're trying to transition to other players, younger players, and I think that it's really good to point out that they're probably going to be inconsistent this year because of that. I think their weakness is probably the fact that they think they're better than they are, and I think it puts them on the back foot because they think that they're better than they are, and I actually have them finishing in 13th place. I don't think they're going to be any good this year. And I think that Ricky Stewart is probably going to make it through because, he just does down there in Canberra. I don't know why. But it might be, next season where if they have another rough season that he comes under pressure because he'll be close to the end of his contract then as well. Makes it easier to pay him out. But, yeah, I just think they're going to have a rough season. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it.
Well, I agree. I've got them finishing 13th as well.
Ah, there you go.
They've had a little bit of churn to their roster. So they've picked up Zach Hosking from the Panthers, Simi Sasagi from the Knights, Morgan Smithies from Wigan, and Kyo Weeks from Manly. And they've lost Jared Croker. I mean, I know you're devastated.
Wait, Jared Croker was there?
He's retired. Yeah.
He was there when?
He's hung up his boots.
Wow, it'd be interesting for them to defend with 13 players on the field now.
They let Matt Frawley go to Leeds, which I think they probably should have hung on to him, to be honest. Because they probably could have gone with Frawley and Fogarty in the halves, I think would have been pretty handy. But they let him go. Harley Smith-Shields has gone to the Titans, Clay Webb's been released, and Jack Whiten's gone to South. Not too sure what they're going to do in the halves. I'm assuming they might have Kyle Weeks playing at 5'8". That is his natural position, but as I said, they're a bit struggling for depth in that area.
And for, like last year, Fogarty went between being okay to being absolutely terrible at times.
He's struggled since leaving the Titans, and I think he's been struggling with injuries as well. He didn't come into first grade at a really young age either. So he's kind of got to start piecing together some good seasons pretty quickly if Canberra's going to be any sort of threat this year.
Yeah.
Next, we've got the Bulldogs. So strength, I'm going to say for the first time in several seasons, they've actually got a pretty solid spine this year. As far as attack goes anyway. Good attacking spine, very creative, which will be handy if they can get the rest of the team to work to a genuine, proper game plan around them. But too much of what the Bulldogs have been doing has been defending. So when they do get to go on the attack, everyone's a bit tired and it's kind of just send it out wide and hope for the best. And there's not been a great amount of genuine structure, I find, in the Bulldogs attack. It's sort of been just hang on approach. Hang in there and hope something comes your way sort of thing. And it's they've got to start working on that. They were rough to watch last year, and I think a lot of people legitimately thought they were going to be a lot better than they were.
I know I did.
I didn't rate them as highly as a lot of people did, but I did think they would do better than what they managed.
Yeah.
So that's their strength. Their defense was a big weakness. Because let's be honest, they conceded almost 100 points more than the Wooden Spooners Tigers and the second last Dragons.
Yeah, it's terrible.
They need to sort that out really fast, and I'm not sure that they will. I've got them finishing 16th.
When it comes to the Bulldogs, like I had them. I think I might have had them making getting in at 8th spot last year, and just when I look back at it and see, you think about what their season turned into last year. I would say their strength this year is that Viliami Kikau will be hopefully healthy this year from the get-go. That would be great. And their weakness is Phil Gould. He treats this team like it's a fancy rugby league team. They have to shuffle players all over the place because of their salary cap situation that's been created there. Crichton will obviously be a really, really good buy for them. They got him on gigantic money, and he's definitely worth it, but they're paying him fullback money and they're going to play him in the centres. And you think between him and Burton and Viliami Kikau, like all three of those players if they don't earn $1 million a year, they earn very close to it. And, that's 30% of your salary cap right there. Yeah. And that's just not how you build. That's not what you do when your team is, misses the finals and they weren't making the finals from May. So I think that they're going to have another really rough year. I've got them coming in at 15th position. I think they'll get a new coach mid-year. Phil Gould will find some coach from the friggin' 90s that he's a mate of. They'll run them for a little bit.
Tim Sheens?
No, I don't think it'll be Tim Sheens. I think it'll be
Phil Gould.
In his ideal world, it would be Phil Gould. I don't know who it'll be. It'll be someone, I don't know, maybe Michael Hagan, someone like that. Like somebody that
Look, get Mick Potter back. That wouldn't be a bad thing.
It wouldn't be a bad thing. They should have stuck with Mick Potter the whole time. Yeah. But he will do that, and then he will look for the next shiny thing on the horizon, and he'll pay that shiny thing. He'll sign them up long term and give them a big salary and tell everyone that this is the coach of the future, and then fuck with the lineup and immediately start to, just do what he's done the whole time, really.
And as we know through conversations we've had with Ben Darwin, that constant churn of your roster, it ruins any chance of cohesion, and that is the worst thing you can do to your team. Yeah. And they've got a lot of changes this year again. So they've picked up Stephen Crichton, Josh Curran, Palasa Famasuli, Drew Hutchison, Kurt Mann, Jamin Salmon, Blake Taff, Connor Tracy, Jake Turpin, and Bronson Cherry. And they've lost Paul Alamotti, Jake Avarillo, Braden Burns, Declan Casey, Raymond Faye-Talamarina, Kyle Flanagan, Michael Gabriel, Tavita Pengai Jr., Luke Thompson, and Corey Waddell.
And look, I don't mind when bad teams get rid of players,
There's a few there, though, they probably could have hung on to. Like Alamotti was a very good-looking centre. Avarillo, very handy player as well. I'd have kept both of those. Faitala Mariner and Corey Waddell, possibly even Luke Thompson, they need forward depth. And to get rid of those guys and replace them with guys who were either similar or maybe, if they're better, it's not by very much at all.
Yeah, there was a lot of sideways moves, huh?
Yeah, it's like all you're doing is moving stuff around and you've got to restart all those combinations all over again.
Yeah.
With a net gain of very, very little. Like, what's the point? It's very West Tigers what they've done with their recruitment.
Yeah, and the thing is that, they've got a bunch of players in that team that are locked up for quite a long time on giant money. So I don't think we're going to see any big name moves left for them because I doubt that they've got the salary cap space for it. But at the same time, we've seen how it works. They'll start to go to other clubs and say, do you want to take this player off our hands and we'll pay half their salary? And when you start doing that, you're fucked.
Yeah. Next is Cronulla. Now, their strength has been their strength for a long time, and that is their forwards. It's not just in the fact that they all do the same thing, like they're all dominant runners or anything like that. It's more the fact that the Sharks have been pretty smart, especially in recent times, of having quite a diversely skilled forward pack. So you can't just use one approach to keep them quiet, because one guy's going to be different to the other guy on the other edge, and their forward rotation that comes off the bench are completely different to the guys they're replacing. So they're a bit more of a like trying to hit a moving target defensively. You don't know what's going to get thrown at you. And that's in a good way for their forwards, because they've got a very good forward pack. Their weakness, I think, is chasing points. I haven't gone through or done the stats on that one, but it's just something in my mind. Every time they start to get a little bit behind, they start to play panic football and they forget all of their structures, all of their processes, and no one knows what's going on, and they just get further and further behind where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I'm hoping, for the Sharks' sake anyway, that they stop doing the panicky stuff and play more to the systems that they had, kind of like they did in 2022, but with this more experienced and slightly better side than what they had in 2022. They should be able to get over that hurdle of struggling against the top 8 sides. And that's literally, they've only got to work on little things to go from being one of those teams in the bottom half of the top 8 that's just making up the numbers in the finals to being a top 4 side that's, a contender to get at least to the final 2 weeks. So yeah, that's kind of where I got them. I do have them finishing 4th.
Wow.
I do like their backline and their spine. So I think they've just got a pretty good roster, pretty good depth across the park. So they're not going to have a huge drop off, in my mind anyway, if injuries and whatnot come along with the guys coming in. They've freed up a ton of money because Wade Graham retired, Matt Moylan's left, Connor Tracy's gone to the Bulldogs. They've only signed 2 depth players pretty much in Billy Burns and Michael Gabriel. So they haven't had much change to their roster at all either. So the cohesion's going to be pretty good. So I assume that they're going to start the season pretty well. So, and that's pretty much a big thing. So yeah, I think they're going to do pretty well this year. I don't think they're going to get to the grand final, mind.
Yeah, I think their big strength is their cohesion, because this group has been together for a few seasons now. Having said that, they don't worry me whatsoever. I think they are the most middle of the road team. I think that their ceiling isn't that high, but I think their basement isn't that low either. I just think that they'll get through on consistency. I've got them finishing 6th. But I don't think there's any chance whatsoever of winning the title. I don't think any of the real contenders will be concerned whatsoever with having to face Cronulla in the finals. I just think that they're going to go all right in the regular season, but they're the epitome of a regular season team. I don't think they have another gear to go to, and I think that that's the problem you probably perceive as well, in that when you do have to chase points, can you go to that next level? They can't do it, and there's a bunch of other teams that can, even teams below them that can, but I just think their consistency will get them into that 6th spot, but they won't really feature in anyone's real title contender list.
I think the one thing that hurt them most last year was the fact that Cade Dykes got injured in the preseason and he missed the whole year, because I reckon they had every intentions of having him as the 5/8 last year, and Moylan would be the backup in his last season, and that would be it. And Dykes went and got injured in that, I think it was the second trial match of the year or something like that, and missed the whole year. And that's why they had to persevere with Moylan for the rest of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if they put Dykes in the number 6 jumper very early on. I mean, they'll go with Trindle initially, no doubt about it. But I wouldn't be surprised if Dykes gets pushed into that role, even if it's just via the bench, something like that. But I think long term, that's what they want. They want to have Dykes with Hines. And it'll be a pretty interesting spine if that's the case, because then you'll have Kennedy, Dykes, and Hines, who can all play fullback and all play basically 5'8". It's an interesting combination. It's very really is, English football.
It really is. By the way, doesn't Dykes and Hines sound like a really cool sauce? Yeah, I agree with you. And when he got injured last year, it felt like there was an excitement and a momentum went out of the club a little bit. I hope he comes back and, he can shake off, that injury and all the rehab he had to go through and everything. And I hope he comes back strong because he looked really exciting. He looked like a good player. And when he went down, it was really sad to see. So fingers crossed that he comes back well because, Dykes and Hines, that's what I want to see. That'd be a good, you'd vote for them in the presidential election, wouldn't you?
Oh, hell yeah. Who would?
Dykes and Hines.
So Dykes and centre Kyle Ero, I think those two are going to have pretty big years this year.
Mm-hmm.
And this will be the first time in several seasons that Cronulla will actually have two genuine centres in their back line. Because they've been persevering with Talakai, who's more of a edge forward, second row sort of thing, and Connor Tracy, who basically came into the side initially as a 5'8" and had to transition out there to help out.
Yeah.
This is going to help their attack because you're going to actually have people who know what they're doing and they know what their roles are there instead of having to figure it out as they go along throughout the season.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed it does help because, they're a little bit, for me, samey across the entire park outside of Hines, really. So, and they need that variation in their lineup to do something about their attack because, I don't think they were any of the top sides. But we'll see how that plays out over the season, hey?
Absolutely. Next we go to the Dolphins. What have we got here? They've still got, as their strength, their forward pack. It feels like I'm saying this a lot.
Mm. Look, we're in the golden age of forwards. That's why.
It is true.
There's so many great forwards.
And the game now is very much along the lines of if you're going to be a top team, you need to be defensively strong.
Yeah.
And so everyone's aiming to get a good pack.
Yeah.
But their pack is very experienced, which is a huge thing. They don't have too much youth in there. They're trying to get a little bit in there. Bench rotations get a little bit stronger. They've got a little bit more depth this year. So that will help. Weakness, though, I think, is going to be their spine. It's I don't know. It's weird.
It's the big unknown for this team. Like
it is. It's not like they're a spine that lacks talent or ability or attack because they've definitely got plenty of that.
Yeah.
But I think it's just more they need time playing together, and they are a pretty young sort of spine as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be, it's just maybe one more full season working together, which would be this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we might see, even by the tail end or the back half of this year, you might start to see them start stringing wins together and being more consistent on the field than they were at the tail end of last year. But yeah, I think that's where I put the weakness at. Just, a bit of organisation and structure there and figuring things out. But they do have a good spine on paper, but I just think working together, still pretty young and still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because, I know Wayne Bennett he said last year he's going to turn it over to Christian Wolf this year. I don't know if that's going to be a full-time thing or what. Is Wayne Bennett going to be there every single day? Like, is he out of the club? It hasn't really been talked about too much. They should be more consistent. I think that they've got a little bit more depth than they had last year, and that was really their downfall, and that wasn't their fault. It's their first year in the NRL. And, yeah, for me, it comes down to, their spine really gelling and making that progress as a spine as well. And if they do that, they might challenge for the edge of the finals, but it's a big ask. I have them finishing 11th. I've got
them at 12th.
Okay, so I just think that at times it's going to look good and we're going to be like, oh, they're doing some things here, but it's just going to be a bridge too far for them this year.
Yeah, I would be surprised if their form this year is like looking at their form last year, but reversed. Last year they started really well and then just fell away. I'd be surprised if they start a bit steady this year and then come home strong.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either.
So they've picked up Jake Averillo, Herbie Farnworth, Thomas Flegler, and Iron Keeley, and they've lost JJ Collins, Herman SASA, Pawasa Famasuli, and Brenko Lee. I think they've basically had upgrades in their signings over what they've lost, which is exactly what you want to be doing.
Yeah, 100%. They're going in the right direction, and they're doing it sustainably, which is good. And over the next couple of years, I think you'll see them buy some more forwards to replace those older players in their forward pack that they've got now. And, they're doing it the right way. And that they haven't got any albatross contracts there either. No. So they've still got the ability to go out and make a splash if the right player comes on the market. So that's a good sign for them too.
Absolutely. All right. Next we have the Titans. I
know. I agree. That's how I feel about them as well.
The strength they've got is their skill on the edge of the ruck. So both second rows, centres, 5'8", spine, that sort of stuff. Plenty of skill out on the edges of the ruck, which is great if you've got someone in the middle to direct it all and get the ball out there and get stuff organised. So that's their main target, I think, is going to be in attack, is trying to get some good ball out to their edges and let them be creative out there. Their weakness, though, I think, is going to be their depth.
Yeah, and like they're a little bit like the Broncos in that they get some really highly rated backs as youngsters and they don't develop them for whatever reason. And they need to look at that as well. It's weird. On talent alone, this is a top 5 squad. Like, they've got some of the best players in the world at their team. And yet, I just can't put any faith in them whatsoever. I've got them finishing in 12th place.
I've got them 15th.
Yeah. And I need to see it because there's been too many times where this team is, you look at them on paper and you're like, man, they've got origin players on the bench. Big Tino's one of the best forwards in the whole world and is like, he actually puts it on the field for them. He actually does it for them. You look at Brimson, you look at Campbell. They've got great players in this team.
I tell you what, that's the thing. I want to see Jaden Campbell at fullback every week. There's been dabbling with this idea of, and it's like they're hesitant to just leave him there.
Yeah.
They'll take him out. Sometimes they'll put him at 6 and move him around. And no. He's your first choice fullback. Leave him there. Put Brimson at 6. Leave him there, right? The more they keep screwing around with these blokes and switching their positions and moving them around and stuff like that, all you're doing is harming their long-term, capabilities for you.
Mm-hmm.
Let them get settled in a role. That will help your attack. Keep moving them around. You're just ruining them.
Yeah.
I mean, a classic example is look what a lot of teams did with Tyrone Peachey.
Yep.
All they need to do is just go, right, you're going to be this position and just leave him there and let him dominate it because they're naturally gifted footballers who can play anywhere. The best thing you can do is make them absolute specialists in one position because they will be more than a specialist. They'll be world-class in that position. But you keep moving them around, they'll never get that opportunity.
Yeah, and look, Campbell's shown, fullback's his place.
Oh, yeah, that kid's brilliant. And
the thing is, too, I can understand wanting to look after a young player and things like that. Now he's a seasoned NRL player. He's still really young, but he's no longer the young guy you got to look after. He's a seasoned NRL player. Play him in his position, and he's either good enough for it or he's not. I personally think he's good enough for it. I don't know why they would stuff him around there.
I don't know, but they need to do that. They haven't changed up their roster too much. They picked up Keenan Palacey from the Broncos and Harley Smith-Shields from the Raiders and lost Cruz Leeming, Tremaine Spry, and Joe Vuna. I think they've got a few players coming off contract in the next year or two, so they'll probably have a bit more changes coming up in future seasons. But yeah, I look at their lineup and just go, yeah.
So I look at their lineup and I think, holy crap, there's so many good players in this team.
There is.
Then they go out there and, all of a sudden they're down 24 points to a team that's like, in 10th place, and you're like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
So I can have no faith in them.
No. Yeah. Fafita needs to either pull his finger out this year, or I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans cut him and he'll never get anywhere near that money ever again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying, where he'd end up? He'd end up at the Raiders. I'm serious.
Yep.
I tried to get him. Fucking Titans should have drove him to the airport.
That's exactly what he'll do, man. Next is Manly. Manly. Strength I've got is their fullback and their halves. Mm-hmm. However, you need to have all three on the field at the same time. Because when they are, and I know no one's got any faith in Luke Brooks, and I know I've said on here several times before that he has all of the skills, like footballing skills, to be a genuinely good NRL player. There's no doubt about that. He can't communicate, and that is the worst skill to be missing, though, as a half. But he doesn't need to worry about that so much when he's got DCE there doing all that for him. So he's now left to do his job. And I think you're going to find pretty quickly he's going to start forming pretty good combinations with Tom Trbojevic if he's on the field. And that's going to work out pretty well, because I think the way Tom Trbojevic plays the game is not too dissimilar to the way Tedesco played the game when Brooks last played with him, which is a ball runner more than anything else. And I think that's going to work really well together for those two. But you're going to need them all on the field at the same time.
I think you are the last person left on Luke Brooks Island. I think let's be honest, I'm not really on the island. I've got a dock there. I think for our listeners,
I'm just in the ocean. I'm halfway between like reality, and I can see the island. I'm just taking solace in the ocean. I'm enjoying the view on both sides, and as soon as the island starts to go down in a ball of flames, I can just paddle the boat back to the mainland.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when your team is bad for fucking 12 years in a row. You end up in Stockholm syndrome.
That's exactly right.
Keep thinking to yourself, fucking Luke Brooks, he's all right. He's actually not that bad when you're watching.
I'm trying to get the Manly fans on side so they take some more West Tigers players. Shh. Look, for me, actually, I'll just say quickly, their weakness, though, is that over-reliance on Tom Trbojevic.
Okay, yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. Oh, that and Anthony Seibold.
Well, yeah. He's a big problem.
Their strength is obviously DCE. Like, he's still fantastic. And what he's doing at his age, and he has not lost anything, not one single thing.
He's still playing like he's 28.
Yeah, it's incredible. And he really is setting a new standard for halves. I mean, how many halfbacks can you think of that played at this age this well? Like, it's normally all over by this age. So, and he's great. He's fantastic. So he, and Tom Trbojevic, in theory it's great, but in practice, what is the chance that he's going to have a season where he's there the whole year? I think outside of those two, this Manly squad is, they've got some okay players there, but for the most part, they're pretty middle of the road players. Anthony Seibold, he is going to ruin it. We know that. It's just a matter of time. So, I have them finishing 14th.
I have Manly 11th.
Okay.
Yeah, they've picked up a lot of West. They've picked up 3 Tigers players.
Yeah.
Luke Brooks, Itasi James, Tommy Talau. They've also picked up Jackson Paulo from the Roosters and Corey Waddell from the Bulldogs. They lost Morgan Boyle, Sam Fainu, Morgan Harper, Sean Kepi, Kelma Tuolangi, and Kyle Weeks.
That's exactly what their squad is. That sound you made.
Their depth is looking horrible. And
yeah.
I mean, what are they doing with Schuster? I can't see him in the 13. He's got to be on the bench.
And they paid huge money to him to be their 5'8", and then went and bought Luke Brooks.
Yeah. So now they've got Schuster on big money, and he's going to have to be a bench player, and he's going to have to be part of the forward rotation. Manly have gone and taken a genuinely good 5'8", and they've gone, let's fast track and turn him into Tyrone Peachy.
It's crazy. And I really, honestly have not really seen enough, and I've really watched him play. I've not ever really watched him and thought, oh yeah, this dude. Like, he reminds me of...
I'll tell you who he reminds me of.
Yeah.
Luke Brooks, and the reason being, we all remember his first game.
That's a good one. That's good. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of, like, this is going to be a weird comparison. He reminds me of a bit of a not as athletic version of Daniel Wagon. But if you got Daniel Wagon and you said he's a 5'8", when he clearly wasn't, but he's not as athletic as him, and he's also, and I'm just going to say it, he's also pretty lazy at times.
Actually, what if we went with Curtis Sirenen? Because Curtis started his career as a 5'8", but obviously his body was saying, mate, you're too big for this shit. And they moved him into the back row. Way too soon. They didn't give him any transition. He always had the ball skills, but his body was Sirenen's body.
No, you know I've just worked out who he is. He is a larger, less versatile version of, oh man, I forgot his name. He's a West Tigers player, Dean Hallertau.
Oh, Dean Hallertau.
That's what he is.
Oh, I love it. I can't say no to that. That's brilliant.
Am I wrong?
You're not. You've 100% nailed that. I've got you. We'll move on to Melbourne. Let's see.
Let's write Melbourne off. Let's do it.
Should we?
Yeah, let's write them off.
Their strength for me is just their absolute consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Week in, week out, minute by minute. They don't give you many options. Even when they're not playing well, you still have to play really well to beat them. Even when they've got a whole heap of players out for Origin, for injuries, whatever else, everybody else just comes up, fills those gaps, and they're still a very tough team to beat. The only weakness, and I've had to think hard about this, and I can't even call this a weakness. Their defence has slipped a little bit in the last season or two.
Yeah.
Not by enough for it to be a problem. And the
by the way, against most of the league, better than most of the league. It's just against. It's really when you line them up against Penrith. Like if Penrith wasn't in the comp, it'd be like, wow, Melbourne maybe has the best defence in the league.
Yeah. So I did get this stat. 2023 saw them concede 459 points in the regular season, which is just the second time they've conceded over 450 since 2006.
Wow, that's insane.
And if history is a guide, the year after Storm have a poor season in defence by their standards, they become remarkably stingy the following season.
Yeah, they fix their problems.
Yeah, and that's the concern that teams are going to have is Melbourne are going to come out and they're going to be a defensive fucking wall this year.
Yeah. And when no one's talking about them, that's when, like, all of a sudden you look up and 6 rounds into the comp, they're leading it.
Yep.
You know, so, for me, their strength is just that whole infrastructure they've got and Craig Bellamy and, you know, they buy their youngsters really well and bring them through really well. It's almost like the opposite of the Broncos in a way in that they get so many hits out of their young players, their young outside backs especially. And, you're really grading. It's a weird thing to talk about, but you kind of got to grade the Storm against the Panthers and the Broncos and those sorts of teams that are real contenders, because that's where they're at. They're in that conversation. I think they're probably a tiny step back from those teams, but at the same time, if something happened to those teams, and Melbourne ended up being the premiers, I wouldn't be shocked.
And they do have that extra gear when the finals come around.
They do, yeah. It takes something special to beat the Storm.
Oh yeah.
I don't care who it is that they're playing against in the finals. If you beat the Storm, you have had to play your ass off to beat the Storm. So yeah.
The other thing they've done too is, after 2.5 seasons of Pappenhausen's horror injuries,
mm-hmm.
they've uncovered a replacement for him already in that Farlongo young kid, and they've already set themselves up to replace Pappenhausen. So if he goes down again, they've got a ready-made replacement straight away. It's not going to impact anything.
Would you be shocked if Pappenhausen finished the year at another club?
Yeah, I would be. I don't think they're going to get rid of him this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if when his contract ends, they don't try and keep him. They just let him go.
I wouldn't be shocked if they did some sort of player swap with him, because he is he's a very good player when he's playing. But if they can get him and he's healthy at the moment, touch wood, right? If they can get him healthy and they can get him playing really good footy, and there's somebody out there that they've got an eye on, I could see them doing some sort of player swap. I think it'd be access to what they need, basically.
I think they'll move Farlongo into fullback as soon as Pappenhausen's contract ends.
Yeah,
they'll let Pappenhausen go.
Mm-hmm.
That will free up a chunk of money.
Mm-hmm.
They've done very little on the player signing front this year. So they picked up Sean Bloor from the Tigers, and that's it. And they've let Tom Eisenhuth, Jordan Grant, George Jennings, Jaden Nikorima, Justin Olam, and Tarek Sims all go. They're stockpiling cash. They're building a war chest. They're building a war chest. And if they let Pappenhausen go, they're going to have a lot of money to go around buying players with.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. The Storm aren't really one of those teams that goes out and buys a huge name player, though, are they?
I reckon they'll be going out and buying a forward pack.
They definitely need a bit more help up front. Because when their forward pack has gone in and out of being they've been really good, but it's very rare that you've been able to look at their pack and say, oh, they're the best. And it's been for moments in a season, not the whole season. And I think that when we've seen them play against the Panthers pack, they've put up a pretty good fight, but eventually everyone's fallen to the Panthers pack. It's not a terrible thing to say, well, we just weren't quite as good as Penrith's pack. Congratulations. You're still a very good pack. But that's what they're aiming to do, is to be better. And so, yeah, they need a little bit more. Bloor's going to be interesting. If they can get him, because he does have potential. So it'll be interesting to see if they can unlock that in him.
Oh, I think they will. He fits what they want. A creative, edge forward who's also pretty solid defense. He's got a very good technique in defense. Very good technique. And that's exactly the sort of, he's 100% a Craig Bellamy player.
Yeah.
So I think they wouldn't be surprised if they have him starting very early in the season, if not from round one. I've got them finishing third. I've written them off.
They have zero chance. Melbourne. Remember Melbourne? I've got them third as well. And honestly, they are still a team that terrifies me.
Oh yeah, they definitely are.
They're horrifying. I don't care. I'm still scared of them. I've got PTSD for all those other teams that the Storm beat.
Yes.
I watched them do it too many times. Listen to me. I'm scared of them. Sorry.
Yep. They're a problem.
Yeah.
All right. On to the Knights. I don't know what to make of this team. I'd say that their attack is a strength because in their last 9 games last year, they scored 319 points, which is an average of 35 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
And compare that with their first 15 games where they scored 307, which was 15 points per game less. Yeah. They unlocked their attack and figured it out. If they stay there and they remember all of that and they keep playing with that, they are going to be a difficult team to come up against. I do think, though, they are lacking depth in the forwards, especially in the back row.
I consider them to be Canberra North.
They
really are pumped about their chances this year.
They're just one of those teams where you look at them on paper and you go, nah.
Yep.
And yet somehow they made the finals.
Yeah.
And you're right. They're exactly Canberra, because you look at Canberra on paper and you go, yeah, I don't think so. And they made the finals. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. And we all know where their attack's going. It's going left.
Yep.
I think this will be Hastings last year in the NRL. I think he'll go back to Super League next year. I think Jack Cogger will take his place and just be more consistent. I think their forward pack, they're just middle of the road. They're not a problem for any of the better teams. And yeah, I have them finishing 9th. I think they'll get a couple of surprising wins here or there. But yeah, I don't see what some other people see in them.
I've got them 10th.
Okay.
And yeah, I think Kai Pearce-Paul, who's come over from England, I think he's going to be a lot better than some people probably give him credit for. He's a pretty good player. How he'll go in the NRL is a bit different, but I don't think he'll be that bad. And he's got a lot of potential for, growing further and getting better.
I'm going to guess that Andrew Johns absolutely loves him. Hey.
Oh yeah, he'll have him as the Golden Boot winner next year and the year after that.
Yeah,
definitely. And that will be with Matthew Johns constantly stuck in his pants as well.
Yes, and then they'll start talking about we should allow players like him to play in State of Origin.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You beat me to it.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we've got the Cowboys. And obviously their front row rotation is probably one of the best in the league.
Yeah.
They just make huge meters. They don't stop running. Their rotation off the bench, it just keeps that going. It just keeps teams in the middle of the field on the back foot for the whole game. However, once they've got those teams on the back foot, I don't find that their halves have the creative ability to get the most out of that advantage that they've created.
No, especially Townsend.
Yeah, they've been struggling. They struggled with that a lot last year.
Yeah.
So I've got their halves as a weakness.
Dearden's good, but Townsend is just...
I'd prefer to see Dearden at halfback and probably even Drinkwater at 5'8". I think that would be better than having Townsend in the halves. And I know you're not a huge fan of Drinkwater, but I think he's comfortably better than Townsend.
Look, he's got more of an upside. Yeah. Right? But that's not saying much. Look, they remind me a little bit of the Titans, obviously without the history of failure, in that you look at their lineup and you're like, holy shit. But last season was so disappointing from them. And, what are we going to get out of Taumalolo? Because he had a really disappointing year last year. It's going to be interesting. I think they've lost Cohen Hess. I have a feeling he did a knee injury on the weekend. Might be gone for the year.
I wouldn't be surprised, given the amount of losses to the Titans forward pack, that Malolo starts playing a lot more minutes again. They're just going to need him to. They picked up Thomas McKaylee, who's the only forward they've picked up, and Viliami Vailea, who's a centre. They're the only signings. They've lost Jake Burke, Mitch Dunn, Brendan Elliott, Ben Hampton, Peter Hiku, Riley Price, Taniela Sadrugu, Shibasaki, James Tamo, and it looks like Luciano Lolu has also left.
Yeah, he's gone. I think is he definitely signed for the Dragons? I'm pretty sure he's signed for the Dragons.
So. That's a very Dragon signing.
It really is. I've got the Cowboys finishing 8th, and I think that...
So do I.
Okay, there you go. You're an expert, Andrew.
Only twice so far.
The other times you're fucking terribly wrong.
Yeah.
I could see this Cowboys team, for whatever reason, hooking it up and being a top 4 team. I can also see them being strangely disappointing again like they were last year. I think the thing that worries me about them is that their forward pack doesn't have enough toilers, and I think you need those toilers. They've got a lot of big impact players, and they're difficult to handle, but I think you need those guys who are just mobile back rowers / could play in the centres if you wanted them to, sort of dudes. I don't think they've got enough of those guys in their team, and I think that's really the area that they're lacking in.
That's fair. That has been a bit of a struggle for them, is getting that consistency in the pack and more on the edges of the ruck than in the middle. In the middle, they've been pretty solid, but yeah. Interesting to see, but yeah, I do have them finishing 8, so I think they're in for a better season.
Like, this is a team that let the Tigers put, 60 or 70 on them last year.
Yeah, and you watch the way they played that game, and to have been outplayed the way they were by a team whose attack had been so woeful for so long, I think that was the moment when Todd Payton came out and says, right, every single one of you are going to get shot in the foot, and I'm going to keep shooting you until you start playing better. Some sort of violence was imposed on the players.
That's when, someone like Payton, when you've got a result like that, and you haven't just arrived at the club, you've been there for a while then, that's one of those, oh shit, now my job is, I got to show that I'm doing something here, otherwise I'll be out.
And to his credit, he turned the club around very quickly after that loss.
Yeah, so we'll see what he does this year. I can't shake those disappointments from last year just yet.
Oh, no, yeah, and nor should we. Next is Parramatta. I have, as a strength, their back 3. And the only reason why it's a strength is because they go to them all the time in attack. That's their only form of attack, is their wingers and Gutherson.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They seem to have compared to a lot of the other teams in the NRL, especially teams that are usually competing for the top 8, they have one of the more one-dimensional attacks in the game. They've made it work somehow, but I think last year teams started to figure it out a lot more, and that's what they struggled with. And that leads to their weakness, which is consistency. If they don't get on top of a team and stay there, they struggle to get themselves into a game and across the line, and they struggle closing out the close games.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously they had some key injuries last year, which didn't help. I think one of their strengths is their cohesion. I mean, this team's been together for a while now, and their players are at that point where it's time for them. They haven't got a huge amount of time ahead of them. It's time to go now, because if this team doesn't win a title in the next couple of years, it's probably past them, and they'll know that. I think obviously there was a hangover from what Penrith did to them in the 2022 grand final, which I think is understandable. And I think that having the sort of year they had last year that was disappointing could be a good thing for them. It might have made them all sort of think, hang on a second, it's not just something that's going to happen. Like, we've really got to go back after it again this year. And as I said, we've got to do it now. Like, they're no spring chickens.
No.
So I think that's the way I'm thinking about Parramatta at the moment. And
I wonder how much of them is still regretting the whole getting rid of Reid Mahoney for Josh Hodgson, and given Hodgson's had to be medically retired, and they got very little out of him because of that.
Well, I mean, you and me sat with straight away. We're like, this is ridiculous, and it turned out to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just think that with this team, like, it's now or never, man. It's now or never. They committed to this team. That's what they've got. They missed the finals last year. I have them weirdly finishing fourth.
Wow.
But, yeah, and in saying that, I still have no faith in them.
I have them ninth.
Okay, I completely understand that.
They've picked up Morgan Harper and Kelma Tuolangi and lost Wanga Blake, Andrew Davey, Josh Hodgson, and Jack Murchie. I think their window's gone.
You reckon? Okay.
Yeah, it's closed. It's passed them by.
Like, for me, I think that it's misplaced faith. I know it. I friggin' know it is. But I just feel like, you know, this is them. This is this group. This is them at the most prime part of all of their careers.
Yeah.
And so it has to be now or never. And I think that's why I'm willing to roll the dice on them.
Nah, they're done.
Okay. No, it's like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah. No, I'm not going with it. If you had said 6th, 7th, 8th, something like that, I've gone, yeah, fair enough. That's probably true. But when you said 4th, I was like, ooh.
They're just, the way I see it, they're just, I could see where they get certain wins. Like, they'll beat Penrith a couple of times this year. They'll celebrate that. They should.
I think they're a little bit too inconsistent and too one-dimensional to be a top 4 team. I don't see them being better than, say, Cronulla. I think they're very, kind of similarly matched, but I don't see them being better than Cronulla. I know you said you're not threatened by them, but I'm not threatened by Parramatta.
Okay, I think I can articulate it better. I think maybe last year, that season they had stopped them being up their own arse as much. And I'm hoping that when the Eels are not up their own arse as much, that they'll just go out and play football. And it might make, and it might make something click for them.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay. No. All right, we'll move on to Penrith.
Okay.
Strength is clearly their defence. I mean, they've been playing off the back of their defence this whole time, and it's superb. They've conceded less than 14 points per game since round 4, 2019, which is 126 games.
Jesus. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's insane.
If you took, you would take that for 1 year.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's unparalleled.
You'd take that for a month.
So even if they drop that and they go out to 16 points per game, they are still a top 3 side, comfortably.
That's crazy.
So they've got room to move in that area, which is just insane. Their weakness is the amount of success they've had. And this is going to sound weird, but when you've had so many players all together as a group and they've had all that success, there's a few issues that happen. One is obviously every other club says, we want this player, we want that player, and the club starts getting broken up. The other thing is, success is the first thing that breeds complacency. And they haven't gone down that path yet, but it's always going to be sitting there lingering. That's why a lot of people are writing Melbourne off all the time. And that's where having a very good coach is really important, because it keeps them grounded and focused on continuing the winning and not getting caught up in the success. That's the most I can come up with, is the concern about complacency. I haven't seen it. I'm not saying it's there. It's just that'll be their issue is make sure they don't become complacent. And as they keep losing more and more players, they've got more and more quality coming through to replace them. They may not be at the same level, but they've got the potential to be on that same level. So they'll just keep coming through. Obviously, they're going to lose Luai at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen Jack Cole come through, and he's, we'll probably see him play an awful lot more this year. And he's only 20. He looks pretty good. I don't think he's too bad a player. He's getting a bit more game time. Will help him with, I think, being more patient when he's got the ball in his hand. We saw in the World Club Challenge that sometimes he can be a little bit keen to move the ball around or something like that when it doesn't need to be and that sort of thing. And that's just going to come with experience in the top level there. But I don't think he was bad at all. I think there's a lot of potential in him.
I think for Penrith, it's weird because you think of all of the players that they've lost. And I did an article last year, and you can make a pretty decent first grade team out of that, that lineup. They'd probably just miss the finals, but that's saying something when it's the players that Penrith have lost, But then, so you think about all that talent that they've lost, but then you look at their lineups and you're still like going through a list of players that is like, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. And that they've been there, they've done that, they've been there, they've done it over and over again,
Yep.
Their depth is actually not too bad considering.
Yeah.
They haven't got the depth in the forwards that they had a couple of years ago where they probably had 2 first grade packs worth of forwards, but it just puts them, their depth is on par with everyone else's depth now. But on top of that, their forward pack is just this absolute machine.
It is, and they're all workhorses.
Yeah, like even the props,
Yeah.
Consideration for them having the best front row of all time. I think we need to start thinking about that with
the world's best non-Englishman
and Fisher Harris. Hey,
the world's best non-Englishman.
Yeah. I think their weakness is that they don't care about games that are played in February. I think that's their big weakness. Yeah. And I will take that if it means doing what they've done over the last 4 years. Look, it's crazy to think that I'm talking about my own team when I say this, because I used to only talk about I only used to whisper about the Storm being like this sort of, element rather than a football team. No one wants to play this team in September, October. No one wants to have to play a must-win game against this team. I think we finally saw in that grand final, and you and me talked about it a lot of times last year, like, have we seen Penrith really go out and do that special thing in attack? And we really hadn't. I think we did in that last, half of the grand final last year. And we know that that's their ceiling. And I don't think anyone else really has that ceiling when it matters in the fucking 50th, 60th, 70th minute onwards.
Yeah.
I've got them finishing second in the regular season, but
yeah, I've got them as minor premiers.
Okay, but it's like the team that beats this fucking team is going to be bloody good. They're going to be really bloody good. They're going to have to fight for it, scrap for it. We all thought Brisbane were that team, and we were all watching them, 50 minutes into last year's grand final saying, yeah, wow, they really were a great team to beat this Penrith team, and they still got beaten. So whoever beats this Penrith team is friggin' deserves it.
Absolutely.
You can't bet against Penrith being premiers, because if you do, you're an idiot.
Yeah. It's simple as that.
Yeah.
They've picked up Paul Alamotti, Dane Laurie, and Brad Schneider, and they've lost Eddie Blacker, Stephen Crichton, Jack Coggers, Zach Hosking, Tom Jenkins, Spencer Leniu, Jamin Salmon, and Chris Smith.
A lot of really good players they lost there, some depth players and stuff, but I think that their purchases are really smart. Like, the Panthers have been really good at buying. which has been scary.
I wonder if the pickup of Dane Laurie is designed to cover Luai. I know they've got Jack Cole, but I wonder if just short term, I'll put Laurie at 6, and I'm talking as of next year.
It wouldn't shock me. I think the good thing about him is you could put him on the bench as a utility player, and I think it would work.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think it would work better than Peachy, but
Definitely.
Mostly because he passed the ball, and Peachy never ever passes the ball.
He's got really good pace off the mark.
Yeah.
Which is huge against tired forwards in the middle and stuff like that. So yeah, I think Laurie's going to be a brilliant 17 for him.
Play 5/8 fullback. He'd do all right on the wing for you.
Yeah.
You could even chuck him on in that sort of role where you've got 3 playmakers on the field in the middle.
Well, you can bring him on to replace Kenny if you needed to at hooker.
You probably could, yeah. They've got some youngsters that they're bringing through. Mav Guy is one of them. This is his year this year to, prove he belongs in first grade. Their depth in their lower grades has been whittled away a little bit, but, the way that they're producing their juniors, like, it's hard to bet against them spitting out 1 or 2 players that we're all like, holy shit, where'd this guy come from,
Yep.
So they're remarkable. I can't believe they're my footy team. They're just doing that. If you could tick all of these boxes and say, wouldn't it be cool if a team did this, and this? They're doing all of that and more, and they're my footy team. I cannot believe it still.
Yeah, it's insane. I'd like to know what it feels like.
Yeah, it's cool.
If I go back to World War One, I'll get an understanding. Next up, we've got the Dragons. Their strength, and it's the only strength they've got, is the Sloan, Lomax, Ravalawa combination. Between the 3 of them, last year they scored 38 of the Dragons' 67 tries and 266 of their 474 points. So that is all they have in attack, is just send it out to that side, which I think is the right edge. Just send it to the right. That's all they do. And it works. But that's it. Their weakness is structure in everything. They're panicky in attack. They just give up easily in defense if they get beaten one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
They are, when you've got a player like Ben Hunt in that side and he's busting his ass and you see the rest of them just sort of meh, you just feel so sorry for Ben Hunt because he's given them his all. They should be paying him $2 million a year.
Well, he's been the best years of his career in a shit team. And, he's been well paid for it. So don't cry for him too much. Cause
I'm not crying. I'm just saying that they should have paid him twice as much because he's more than earning that $1 million a year.
100%, yeah. They're crap. I think their strength is that they have nice socks, and their weakness is how weak they are.
I was going to say the strength is the ground is right near that coastline in Wollongong.
Yep, the wind sock, that's pretty good. That holds up pretty well.
Sometimes they play in Sydney, but their home ground in Illawarra, that's mint.
Their ground in Sydney is a weakness, definitely. I think Dragons fans know what this season is like. We're not, breaking news for poor old Dragons fans, poor bastards, but and even the players that they've gone out and signed, they're the sort of players that you're like, yeah, that'll give you some depth in New South Wales Cup,
Yes.
Luciano Leilua, they've just outlaid some big money for him, and I know that at his best he can make some stuff happen, but I don't know. I wouldn't be spending the money on him, but I think that's all they could look to get. Who was the last player that they really signed was Ben Hunt. They don't get players. That's a fucking problem. Yeah,
and look, I know I've said it before, but with Shane Flanagan there, he's shown that his only structure he has is having a strong forward pack and working everything off the back of that and having a team that grinds out wins. And this team does not have the defensive capability to do any grinding of any victories anywhere. So I wouldn't be surprised if over the next 2 or 3 years that he's there, he's just constantly dumping forwards and buying in new ones and just putting all his money into the forward pack and not giving a shit about what goes on in the back line, because that's just what he does. Whether it'll work or not, I don't know. But
we'll see how he uses the salary cap, and I'm sure they'll be making some changes in their sports science department.
Just keep him out of the nurse's office, all right?
Yeah.
So they've got a lot of player movement as well. They've picked up Corey Allen, Tom Eisenhuth, Raymond Faitala-Mariner, Cole Flanagan, Jesse Marshke, Hame Sele, Ronald Volkman, Luciano Lalua, and they've lost Talatau Amoni, Billy Burns, Tyrrell Fuimiono, Jaden Hunt, Nick Louis Toso, Tauto Moga, Zane Musgrove, and Jaden Sullivan.
I would, out of this whole team, the only players that I really look at and think, oh, yeah, is Ravalawa, Hunt, and Sully McNuggets. He's great for them. He was great for them last year. They're the only three that I look at and think, yeah, they're a plus. Yeah. The rest of them you could keep. If it sounds like I've got a disgust for this team, yes, I do. And I'm right there with Dragons fans over it. I can't imagine how over it they are. It's been fucking disgraceful where the ownership of this club has taken the Dragons, and that we're here at this point.
It's got a lot of 2022 West Tigers about it when they've just announced they've signed Tim Sheens. You go, you fucking what?
Yeah, it really does.
We're trying to go forward, and you've done this garbage. I've got them getting the spoon.
I have them 16th.
Next we've got is Souths. The strength is still their attack.
Mm-hmm.
How can it not be? They've got all those powerful ball runners, insane speed out of dummy half, obviously, and Latrell Mitchell. Their weakness, though, is their depth in the spine. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of why White was picked up, because he can cover centre, fullback, wing. So that kind of helps there. But that is a bit of an issue they've got, especially in the halfback role.
I think that, last year was weird for South. Something happened there, and I don't know what it was. They broke a little bit. I'm going to say outright, I have them 5th, and it's a weird thing. I'm doing the same thing with them that I'm doing with Parramatta.
Well, look, I've got them 7th.
Okay, so it's not as dramatic.
No.
According to you, anyway.
I'm just waiting for Latrell Mitchell to have one full season for South. He hasn't done it yet, and that's all I want to see, because I reckon if he does that, boom, lights out. They're in the top 4.
Yes.
And I'm putting up 7th just in case he doesn't have another full season. I still think they're good enough to get there.
I think that, they've got a lot of talent in their team. I worry about their forward pack a little bit. But I just think through the regular season, like at the very least, they've got enough players there that can, win a lot of footy games for them. Can Latrell Mitchell have just a full go into the final series? There's no issues in terms of injuries or anything, and he just plays a full final series and that's it. That's what you want to see out of them.
Absolutely. They've picked up Sean Kepi and Jack White, and then they've lost Jed Cartwright, Hame Sele, and Blake Taffy, whatever it is. We had the Bulldogs. We won't hear of him ever again.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Poor bugger.
Next we've got is the Roosters. Strength is still their spine, and it's mostly because there's not many other strengths around.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised, though, if this year they start transitioning to what the Roosters are going to look like in 3 or 4 years' time, because their weakness is the fact they do have an aging roster.
Yeah. I have their strength as being the players that don't want to play the sport anymore next year, and their weakness is that people still think they're fucking good and they're not.
I think the thing you're going to find, though, is that they're still going to be better than the majority of teams.
Do you? Because I don't.
I've got them 6th.
I've got them 10th.
Ooh, nice.
I think
I like a bit of controversy.
I think Trent Robinson is overrated. I think James Tedesco looked a full step slower last year and is probably going to look even slower this year, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what happens. That fucking Daly Messenger retired, because he lost the step.
I think look on Tedesco. I think the best thing he can do this year is just not be playing rep footy anymore, and that will help prolong his career just a little bit longer. I think he's got to give it away.
I think, I just don't think he's up to rep footy anymore. Personally, he's not.
Well, it's that as well. But yeah, if I was him, I'd just say, you know what, I'm stepping down from rep footy now, just focusing on playing for the Roosters. That would help the Roosters and him out quite a bit. And I wouldn't be surprised when his contract ends that the Roosters let him go.
They are stupid. I think they're completely stupid for not having moved him on already and given that fullback role to Joey Manu. And Joey Manu's said, look, I've got to go now. And that's fair enough. The people talk about the Roosters forward pack. I'm sorry. They're not good. I don't know what this alternative reality is where anybody has to worry about the Roosters pack, but they're not fucking good.
We saw last year their best player in the forwards was Maria Hargraves.
And he's as old as the hill, and he's a fake tough guy.
Lindsay Collins was still pretty solid, but Angus Crichton was nowhere. Tupanua is a toiler. There's nothing wrong with that. And Radley he put so much pressure on his side through stupid penalties.
Mm-hmm.
And he's become one of the most overrated players in the game today.
Yep. 100%.
So they've got their entire forward pack is a bunch of depth players now. And one or two good starters. And
they're relying on tiny halves who one of them is extremely injury prone. And if I said to you, man, this guy got an injury in round 2 and that was it, he retired, you wouldn't be super shocked. And Walker's a very small player that everyone targeted, and man, he just looked beat. He just looks like he's getting beat up worse and worse. He's a very skillful player, but it doesn't matter if you're just getting destroyed over and over again. So you're relying on two halves that are just getting smashed up.
And who's the hooker?
Smith.
Yeah.
Who don't buy players from the Storm. How many times do we have to say it? Stop buying fucking Storm players. They never are good when they leave the Storm unless their name is fucking Greg Inglis.
Or Tino.
Yeah. It's
well, hang on, there's one more. Guy who went to the Warriors. Tohu Harris.
Oh, yeah, he was all right.
But that's pretty much it. Brandon Smith, though, he went there and immediately became part of whatever system they had in place and stopped being the player that made him a test player. And he needs to go there and says, you know what, I'm going to start playing the game I want to and get the rest of the team playing, in the forward pack, playing more to his style of game. Because he's playing something different and it's not working. I remember watching Jason Taylor forcing Robbie Farah to change the way he played hooker. And it made Robbie Farah an absolute bore to watch. And he was absolutely shithouse. And it completely destroyed the Tigers' attack. And it took Farah 2 or 3 seasons to find out what he was supposed to do again and get back there. Brandon Smith's going down the same path, but he's younger.
Have you ever seen Brandon Smith on that podcast he's on?
I haven't seen him since he left Melbourne.
Okay. I've watched Brandon Smith a couple of times on that podcast he's on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he thinks about a great deal of stuff about his footy.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I think he's just he goes with the flow. Whatever's happening, he'll go with it. And,
He's been very disappointing since leaving Melbourne. Very disappointing. I'm being as gentle as possible.
Well, look, Bellamy takes players and he gives them a focus and he gives them a real simple job to do, And the Roosters bought Brandon Smith to be a representative hooker for them that would be a big addition to their team. And that's not what they've got out of him so far at all. It hasn't even been close. So, that's why I've got him in 10th. They're not making the finals.
At the moment, he's just been Dean Hallertau.
Pretty much.
So yeah, that's it. Warriors. The crazy thing is, I've seen a lot of people writing them off. I've got their strength as being their depth.
Yeah.
Especially in their spine and their back line. They've got a ton of depth there. And it's a depth, it's a mix of experience and juniors coming through, which is brilliant what you want to see. And the weakness is not too dissimilar to the Sharks last year. They can struggle against the more elite sides. But yeah. I still have them finishing 5th.
I've got them finishing 7th. And I actually watched one of their trial games. I liked the fitness that they had. It looks like they've had a really, really good pre-season and off-season. And they needed it. You know, Webster's obviously got them physically ready for this season ahead, which is great to see. I do think that they can back up a lot of what they did last year. They're not going to sneak up on teams. I love the way their season played out last year, where they come out and they weren't a great team, and then they had that game against the Sharks, where the Sharks they got a pretty big lead about them, and the Warriors were just like, no, fuck this.
Yeah, they mowed them down.
We're not doing this anymore, and yeah, they mowed them down. So to have that in this side, that's special to be able to do that. So I've got them in 7th, but it's not like it's not a 7th of, they're going to be worse than last year. I actually think that we're going to look at this Warriors team as being more of a real threat than they were last year. And we're just going to see how they go in the finals. Because last year's finals, I mean, you know, when Johnson went down, it was basically all over for them, especially considering that it was a season where they come from nowhere and made the finals. I think it's going to be different this year for them. I know that they're lower down on the ladder than a lot of people are probably, you know, happy about on my ladder anyway. But I really do. I think that we're going to look at them as much more of a legitimate finals threat. I don't think they can win the premiership, but I think that they'll go pretty good this year. I think they're in for a good year. And by the way, like all of their season tickets and jersey sales and everything over in New Zealand are off the charts record numbers already. Yeah. So it's so cool.
And they've had a little bit of player movement, but the players they've brought in are upgrades to everything they've got rid of, which is exactly what we want to do. And they've brought in less players than what they've let go.
Mm-hmm.
So they've brought in Kurt Capewell, Channel Harris Tavita, and Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, and they've let go Josh Curran, Valingi Kepu, Bailey Siren, Viliami Valea, Ronald Volkman, and Braden Williami.
Yeah, and it's like, and they've lost Adam Fanua-Blake as well.
Oh, that's for next year.
Oh, I thought he'd already gone.
No, I'm pretty sure he's signed with the Sharks for next year.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
so they're still going to be this year.
I just think they're going to be where we're going to see them on the ladder is really legitimate. And it's gonna be really interesting to see how they go through the Origin period, because that's obviously where they, you know, you make hay while the sun shines sort of thing. So they normally do pretty well around that time of year, but and if they do, like, it's just a couple of wins different to be in the top 4 to 7th. I think that the middle pack in the NRL is pretty close to one another. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them this year. It's going to be interesting.
I want to see how RTS goes, because I'm almost certain they're going to put him in the centres.
Yeah.
And that'll be a different playing style to what he did last time he was playing the league. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
He look, when I watched him in that trial, he looked really good in the centres. So I think he's going to go all right. The thing about him as a centre is he has the size for it.
Oh, absolutely.
So where a lot of guys that were previously fullbacks that you move to the centres, like a lot of them don't work out unless they're giant dudes, and he's a giant dude.
Yeah. And last but not least, the West Tigers. Strength, the front office has been cleaned out.
Everyone got sacked from last year.
I'd also say their 1, 7, and 9 is, they're not all-star, but they have they have skill sets that complement each other and what the team needs to do to be more competitive in attack, which is very, very helpful. They're finally starting to get some depth in the spine, which they've not had for ages. Mind you, the depth is a lot of youth players coming through, but they are pretty good youth coming through in those areas there. Their weakness, obviously, is their defence. It's fucking Hail Mary defence is what they've got, which is just atrocious. They've had for too long no structure, no cohesion, and no communication in the defensive line. So all I want to see this year is that they start getting back to focusing on, let's make it harder for teams to score points against us. Because that's all you got to do. As soon as teams have to throw riskier passes or have riskier plays to try and get points against you, whether they get the points or not, when you start making them play with risk is when you start getting opportunities for yourself. And that's when the tide starts to turn. But at the moment, teams are doing training runs and running very simple plays to score points against their Tigers, and they're scoring a lot of points against them. So it's a simple structure thing. The problem they're going to have too is they've got a rookie coach.
Yeah.
Benji, though, has been doing and saying, and from what I've seen from some of the comments from people who've been going to the training and from some of the videos and stuff, he is focusing very heavily on structures, which is very important. This team needs that more than anything right now. I don't think they'll be focusing too heavily on, we're going to be a top 8 side or we need to get all these number of wins. This is going to be a year where they go, right, this is year 0. And we need to work on being better defensively before we start thinking about how many points we're going to score or how many games we're going to win. We need to get the defense right, and then we can build around that. They haven't got the squad yet, especially in the forwards, to be a defensively strong side. But if they can get the structures in place, that's important.
I look at this season as like they had to rip the Band-Aid off, and they finally have, and it's not going to look pretty at all. In fact, I think it's going to be a real horror show of a season because they just don't have the talent. There's a few makeshift players and Benji's working with what he's got, and it's fucking not much at all. I think, Coruscant has performed beyond my wildest expectations. We all thought he was going there for a payday, and my God, that young man has been everything you could have possibly hoped for and more. The fact that a hooker can stand out in the atrocious shit of that team the way he did, and you can actually look at him and say he stood tall. He can walk with his head high.
Oh, sure.
Oh my God, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there's not much here. I mean, this is like we laughed about it last year. This is the Aiden Caesar era, and it's going to be really fucking fucked. It's going to be bad. Like I don't mean to make it sound horrible for Andrew because, man, I've seen you go through this shit. But at least when you're going through this shit, you can say the worst of it, if this is probably the worst of it, and it's going to definitely get better. Whereas in the past, it's like, I don't know if this is the worst of it, and it's probably going to get worse from here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think last year was the worst of it.
You reckon?
Yeah. Now, I know Caesar's not the world's greatest halfback, but the one thing he has that the Tigers haven't had for years is communication. And that is a big thing because finally we're going to have a hooker who's going to be able to communicate something to the halfback, and that halfback's going to be able to communicate that to other people.
It will be interesting having a halfback that uses his mouth.
Yeah. And so
and
this is
not.
And I know it's not much, okay, but communication, especially when you're the halfback, it is the number one skill you need to have. Everything else comes after that. If you can't communicate to the rest of your team, nothing happens. And we saw it with Brooks. You take the communication thing aside, right, and you go, right, let's not look at that. Skill set wise, he's there with most players in the NRL. But you add the communication in there, and he is the worst communicating halfback I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, me too. Yep.
He's an absolute mute.
Yep.
He does nothing. And so
Yep.
to finally have someone there who's going to be able to talk with the backs, help them run plays, because Caesar's also not a player who's flashy. He's basically Chud Townsend who can kick goals better. That's it. But that's kind of what the Tigers need right now, is just someone to direct traffic and say, you need to do this, you need to do that, and get these players running the right lines at the right times. It's simple stuff, but that is so important because it means Coruscant doesn't have to do that for the backs as well as the forwards. He can focus on being in the forwards. It's going to make Coruscant better, which is scary to think of. But it's a tiny little thing, but it helps out other players on the field. As I said, I don't think it's going to make much difference to the Tigers' attack as far as scoring points goes. I think the reason why it was brought in was because that communication is going to help with their defensive structure and where they're supposed to be on the field. That's what they're focusing on, is getting that communication working. They've brought in Justin Olam. He's not a out-of-this-world player, but he's pretty solid defensively. Stafford Toa is probably going to be moving into the centres on a more regular basis, so he's also a decent defensive player. They're trying with what they've got to make their side a better defensive side. They still have John Bateman in the team, and he was dog shit last year.
He was so bad.
I don't see him being any better this year.
Nah. Man, if they could get off his contract and get him, all I would be doing is like, I'd get somebody, I'd get the players either side of him in the locker room. I'd say, listen, you two need to keep asking about Wigan. What's Wigan like? What's it like? Oh, it sounds wonderful. Oh, what a wonderful place full of magic and charm. And get this guy wanting to go back home.
I'd be going to him and say, John, I've got a video for you. And I'd sit him down and just get him to watch Liam Fulton highlights. And then at the end, I'd just say to him, he's better than you.
Yes, he is.
I would rather, 100 times over, I would rather Liam Fulton back because A, he can tackle, and B, he runs lines.
But you don't.
You don't do either of those anymore, John. What do? You get the ball out wide and you throw the ball as you had to get tackled to the ground, or you kick it to no one.
Yeah, or kick it on the third tackle in his own 20.
What are you doing? I will take Liam Fulton 1,000,000 times over.
Yep. 100%. What a terrible signing. My goodness.
Man. I have not been impressed with anything he's done. And I think because there's a lot of young guys in this team as well. I think if they get shown proper structure pretty early on, it's going to help them move to the next level and get better, which is better for the future. And everything they've got to be doing this year has got to be long-term. Caesar's not the long-term halfback here. He's there because all the other halves we've got at the club are 18, 19 and 20 years old.
Yeah.
You can't bring them in yet. Not in a team that's this garbage. You need to get someone there with experience to show them a bit of structure and get things moving in the right direction and get all of these young players who are currently there, a few years old, a bit more experience, and get them winning a little bit more regularly. I'm not saying 15 wins a year. I'm saying if by this time, by 2026, they're looking at the fact that they can get close to getting 9 or 10 wins in the season, that's where they should be focusing. I think this year they've got to be looking at 7 or 8 wins. Not huge.
I honestly think, I hate saying it, man, but I think that this is going to be an historically bad year for the West Tigers. Not like in terms of clubs ever. I think this is going to be one of those seasons for the West Tigers, but one they had to have.
So you've got them 17?
Yeah, I've got them 17 by miles.
I've got them 14th.
Okay.
And
I don't like saying it.
No, I know. But I'm being as optimistic as humanly possible there.
And I fucking get that, man. I've been there. I remember in 2000, 2001 with the Panthers, and there were some dudes in that team, and I was like, yeah, he might be a good player one day. Like,
I'm pretty sure I put the Tigers as wooden spooners last year.
You did last year because I think I had them second last or third last.
Yeah, and I might have had them last year before. I can't remember.
I think I had them last, and then just before when we were talking, and then just before we started recording, I was like, no, I'm going to change them from last. And I regretted that the whole season.
Yeah, I was pretty confident on that one.
Yeah, you were.
We've got a few more predictions here.
Yep.
Dally M Player of the Year. Who you got?
I have got Dylan Edwards because I just don't have faith in New South Wales that they're going to select him. So I think he's going to play for the Panthers during the Origin series. And I just think that he looks bigger and stronger. Like he's always been a bit of he's never looked weak, but he kind of looks like a fucking accountant. You know what I mean? He's one of those players, you know.
Wiry.
He looks like a footy player now. And I am here for the Dylan Edwards balding era as well because he shaved his head.
There was a player who was at the Sharks and went to Penrith, a winger, David Simmons.
Yes.
He looks as unassuming as David Simmons.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
I'm only talking like when you look at him when he's just standing in front of you, you just go, oh, okay. You play NRL, do you? Yeah, so do I.
He looks like a 20s, mid-20s dude but he used to skateboard when he was a teenager.
Skater boy.
Yeah, but like he's lost all of that now. But like Dylan Edwards, he just looks a bit bigger to me now. And I just think that he's going to be in a winning team. The thing that would stop that is that there's obviously going to be plenty of weeks where other players in that Panthers team take points off of him. And obviously there's going to be a thing with Cleary that everyone's going to focus on Cleary after what we saw in the grand final. So there's going to be that. But I think he can make up some points during Origin and stuff like that. And just the fact that he's always there, he's always available, he's always making big meters and stuff like that on the days when he's not man of the match. I think it'll be really easy to look at his stats and say, oh, he's second or third, you know. Especially
looking at the stats that AndrewRLP looks at.
Yeah, well, the 125 try assists and the 53,000 meters gained.
Yeah.
Pretty good stats. Like if he can do that again, he'll be the greatest player of all time. So, yeah, that's who I've got for Dally M.
Well, as a bit of a shock, so do I.
No fucking way.
Yep, Dylan Edwards. To me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, okay.
I think he's got that nailed. Coach of the year, I'll go first on this one.
Okay.
I got Kevin Walters.
I fucking have Kevin Walters as well.
If he can get the Broncos into the top 4 for a second season, I think that's enough for him to get that award, because what he's done to turn that side around is remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And then how he's managed to take them to the next level after turning them around, he's got to get that award, mate. I don't care what any other coach does. If he gets him in the top 4 again, that's enough for me. He gets that award.
Yeah, the turnaround's been historic, and he's done it it's not like he went out and he bought $3 million worth of players and added it to the good young players he had. He worked with what he had.
Yeah.
He brought in his son to play at hooker, who was trying to get his career back on track from a knee injury.
Well, let's be also honest too. This is a son who failed to produce any decent form at the Storm and couldn't even secure a place in one of the most woeful West Tiger sides of all time.
Yeah,
and he's turned him into a grand final player and a regular in the NRL.
Yeah, and I dare say that the best game of his career before he got to the Broncos and under his father's coaching, he had a major knee injury during it, his best game he'd ever played. So, it's just remarkable. And you and me were questioned whether Kevy Walters was the right dude. Man, I'm so happy for him. I am so, so happy for him. One of the things I'll never forget is footage of him during the last 10 minutes that you can actually watch it on YouTube, where they show the coaches' boxes for the two grand final teams last year, and it's the Broncos box and the Panthers box. And watching Kevin Walters watch the game, and you know, you and me talked about him being so emotional becoming the Broncos coach, and we're worried about that. But watching him watch that grand final, and like it was that it was like that deathly competitor look in his eye, where everything he had seen, nothing surprised him because he has done this shit himself. And he just was watching the game in a really interesting way. And then you look at his comments after the grand final, and it was, once again, it was a guy that was really together, really was on top of the situation. I just loved all of it. I loved all of it. And I think that last year, obviously with the way that the Broncos sort of a little bit come from nowhere to be so good, he didn't get the props that he really deserved. And I think that he will get them this year if they finish top, say, 2 or, you know, and I have them finish minor premiers in the regular season.
Yep.
So yeah. And I think that they're one of the two teams to beat, and it's like only an idiot would tip against the Panthers because like they're some sort of fucking, I don't know what's happened with them, but it's like this weird superhero sort of shit they've decided to do. But damn, this Broncos team is amazing, and it's been that way because of Kevin Walters. So yeah, that's why.
That's true. Rookie of the year, who you got? Surely we're not going to match up on this one.
If we've matched up on this one, okay.
I'm confident we haven't.
Okay, if we match up on this one, let's quit doing the podcast.
All right.
I picked Penrith Panthers' Jesse McLean.
Oh, good. I've got Cronulla Sharks' Kyle Iro.
Okay.
Kyle Iro had an unbelievable season last year in the New South Wales Cup. Mm-hmm. Brilliant centre, and he's going to walk right into that centre spot now that Connor Tracy's left. Mm-hmm. He'll walk in there, and he's going to be immense. I've got huge raps on him, man. I expect him to have a really big year this year.
I basically picked McLean for the same reason we had the Rookie of the Year last year at Penrith. Like, I can see him slotting in. He's a really good football player. I know he had his debut last year, and it was a shocker. It was like one of those Darren Lockyer. Remember Darren Lockyer's first Test match where it was like, this fucking guy's never going to be good in a Test. Like, it was one of those performances. And I just think it'll be one of those things of like, it's a young dude. I think he's going to get his opportunities. He's going to do it in a really good team. And if he's got a little bit of experience now of what it is in first grade, and I think it'll just be easy for him.
Well, how's that for a review of people? Doesn't get much better than that, does it?
Did we do all right?
I think we nailed it. Right, season off. We've already organised it.
Yeah. You've got Penrith versus Brisbane grand final?
It's either going to be Penrith, Brisbane or Melbourne. I've got those three being the grand finalists.
Yeah, same here.
You just need that team who's going to go that next step, and I can't see anyone other than those three being able to do that.
Do you think Penrith are beatable?
Possibly. I'm not convinced. That defence is insane. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, that's. I just can't believe what they've been able to do so far. The thing is, their best years are ahead of them too. It's friggin' insane.
No, fully agree with you, man. Fully agree. I suppose that wraps this one up.
Mm-hmm.
We'll let everyone go so we don't hit the 2-hour mark. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Make sure you check us out on all the socials. We really like it if you'd leave us a message on the YouTube video as well, because that way they're all just grouped together, and we'll do another episode sometime soon. We'll go through those YouTube comments.
Mm-hmm.
And, I guess we'll catch us all after the first part of the first round has been played. Give us over 2 weeks. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll catch us all next time.